The biggest thing we hear about, and the most comments I see on all the social channels, is how expensive it is to buy a home now. So, how much does it really cost to buy a home in Chattanooga, Tennessee? Hey there, my name is Daniel McKee, and if you are thinking about buying or selling in the greater Chattanooga area, then my team and I want to be your real estate resource of choice. Go ahead and reach out at info@mckeehomesgroup.com. Now, when I say Chattanooga, what I really mean is the greater Chattanooga area, which includes the surrounding cities like Ringgold, Georgia, Catoosa and Walker counties, all of Hamilton County, and Bradley County too. It's just easier to say the greater Chattanooga area or Chattanooga, East Tennessee, and North Georgia. Okay, so exactly how much does it cost to purchase a home in Chattanooga, Tennessee? Well, this question can be answered in a lot of different ways. I could just sit here and walk through the average home price in each city or neighborhood of Chattanooga and North Georgia. Those average home prices vary significantly depending upon where you're purchasing. For instance, if you're purchasing in North Chattanooga, or a neighborhood typically referred to as the North Shore, you'll be looking at prices that are well over $300 per square foot. A typical move-in ready 1,000 square foot bungalow that has 2 beds and 1 bath sells for over $325,000. And in Chattanooga's south side, a 1 to 2 bedroom condo will also be at least $300,000. But just over the state line in Rossville, Georgia, a moderately updated 1,000 square foot home with about the same year of build will be right around $230,000. That's a $100,000 difference within just a couple miles. And further east in Ringgold, Georgia, a standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with around 1,700 square feet or so will also be right around $330,000, same as that 1,000 square foot bungalow in the North Shore. And further north, but still east and over the state line in Ottawa, Tennessee, that same 3-bed, 2-bath home will be between $370,000 and $400,000. So what's the point? Well, the first point is that real estate is hyper local, and that's good news for everyone. You might see on the news that the average home price in Chattanooga, Tennessee is $335,000, and that might feel exciting or deflating, but the reality is average home prices mean nothing. It's just a metric to track appreciation. So answering the question, how much does it cost to purchase a home in Chattanooga, Tennessee, isn't answered best by looking at averages. You can do that yourself on Zillow or Homes.com or Realtor.com or Truly or HomeBot or HomeSnap, or you get the picture. The best way to answer that question is by answering this. How much are you going to pay? You, as the buyer. That answer also varies wildly, but I'll attempt to answer it as succinctly as possible. The biggest cost you're going to incur when purchasing your home will always be your down payment. There's a very popular misconception that you need 20% down payment to purchase a home, but that's just not true anymore. There are conventional loans available that will allow you to put down as little as 3% of the purchase price as a down payment. And there are also down payment assistance programs available that offer grants for down payments and closing costs, as well as secondary mortgage options that will allow you to finance a good portion or all of your down payment in addition to a larger loan. And that's not to mention VA or USDA loans, which allow for a 0% down payment to purchase. So if we're talking average home price in Chattanooga, you're looking at about $9,000 for a down payment for a 3% conventional loan. Okay, after you're under contract on a home, you'll need to consider the type of liquid cash you need up front or within days after everybody agrees on the contract. In Tennessee and Georgia, we call this the binding agreement date. First, you'll need earnest money. All earnest money amounts are negotiable, but generally we see earnest money to be about 1% of the purchase price. So for a $300,000 home, that means you could write a check for $3,000. That money goes into a trust account, which just means it's being held and nobody is cashing it, and it will be rolled into your down payment. You also need to have money for inspections. A general home inspection will run you right around $500. If you need a clear termite letter, you'll need around $75 or so for that. And then you'll also need money to pay for an appraisal. That's right at $600 to $800. This one varies slightly depending upon your lender or your financing situation. If you're financing very little, you may receive an appraisal waiver. If you're paying with cash, an appraisal is optional. If you do require an appraisal, which is standard in most transactions, some lenders require you to pay for it up front and some deduct the appraisal as a closing cost. Okay, so here's where you really get into the money that you'll spend when you're purchasing a home. Just like when you go to a store and you purchase a shirt for $29.99, you'll still have to pay tax on top of that. So when you go to purchase a home, you pay the negotiated price for the home, but you're also going to pay for some costs on top of the purchase price. These costs, in addition to the purchase price, are referred to as closing costs. These costs are generally anywhere between 2.5% to 3% and can increase dramatically based on several factors, but that's for a different video. For now, we'll stick with describing closing costs based upon what I like to call the Big Five. First, your lender is going to charge you a loan origination fee. That's literally a cost to give you a loan. Second, you'll pay a conveyance tax. That means that the state is going to charge you to convey the property into your name. Third, you'll pay for deed insurance from the title company. In essence, you're purchasing an insurance policy from the title company to protect you from any claims, assessments, or liens on your property after you close. Fourth, you're going to pay any prorations or prepaid costs like prorated property taxes or HOA fees. You've got to pay your portion through the end of the year and also pay to fill up your escrow account. So you're prepaying insurance by a couple months, prepaying property taxes, etc. And finally, you'll be paying for the cost of your representation. That's number 5. When purchasing real estate, you have the opportunity to hire representation to legally represent you in the buying process. There are so many reasons to use representation. Go to this link here for more information about those. And in order to receive that representation, you'll need to pay a commission. So in summary, on a $300,000 home, you'll need liquid cash up front to pay earnest money and to pay for inspections and an appraisal. At the closing table, you'll need money for your down payment, which after your 1% for earnest money is now only $6,000 if you're putting down 3%. And then you'll need money for closing costs, which will be estimated at 3%. And you'll also need to pay your commission for your representation, which let's say you've negotiated for 3%. So all in all, you're looking at $28,400 to purchase a $300,000 home? Wait, what? Yeah, that's a lot of money out of pocket for a $300,000 home in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Well, let me share some good news with you. In most cases, the sellers are still paying a concession to help pay for buyer representation. So maybe the seller is paying 2.5% as a concession to pay for your representation as a buyer, so you're only on the hook for $1,500. And in many cases, buyers are also negotiating for the seller to pay closing costs. So let's say we negotiate for the seller to pay $6,000 of your closing costs. Now, let's also say that you've had the opportunity to find a program that offers you a secondary 10-year mortgage that will pay up to 5% of the purchase price for a down payment and for closing costs. So that means you're still on the hook to pay the earnest money up front, which is $3,000, but the secondary mortgage is paying $15,000. So $15,000 minus $6,000 left for your down payment is $9,000. Minus the $3,000 you still need for closing cost is $6,000. Minus your cost for commission, $1,500, and paying yourself back for the inspections and appraisals, $1,400, you're left with $3,100, which means you can also pay yourself back for the earnest money that you deposited right after you went under contract. Okay, wait, so that means you get $100 back? Yeah, it does. All right, so there's obviously a ton of variables when it comes to purchasing a home, and this is just one scenario out of a million. This specific scenario is geared toward a first-time home buyer or a buyer purchasing without equity to roll into a purchase, but most of the info here is universal. When you're purchasing a home, the price varies wildly based upon the price, condition, and location where you're purchasing it. You will pay costs that are associated with the purchase price that are over and above the price that you've negotiated for the home. And the most important piece, who you choose to represent you in any real estate transaction is oftentimes the most important piece of all. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed this content, go ahead and click the subscribe button. We want to be Chattanooga's favorite real estate resource, and that starts with serving you. See you next time.